Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to a new week of FBC Radio Live. That's right, we've been off for a couple days, but we are back. It is Wednesday, October the 18th, 2023, and we are gearing up for another hopefully exciting week in the NFL. But, John, it's it's funny. We've been talking about it since the beginning of the week or beginning of the season, and it feels like we just don't have any really elite teams in this league. And I know there's a couple that seem to have separated themselves at the top, but that separation has dwindled a little bit. Certainly this past week after their performances, no more undefeated teams. But yeah, it's just, it's kind of, there's no team that's really running away with it. And maybe, in a few weeks we'll sit there and say, oh, well, the Chiefs are the Chiefs. But, right now they don't look like the Chiefs. So even in victory, you have some question marks. And, yeah, it's going to be interesting. We're going to do our top five teams in a little bit. So, maybe we'll clear some things up for you all out there. But yeah, John, I mean, the reality is I don't even know exactly who is great and who isn't at this point.
Well, you mocked me for picking the Jets to upset the Philadelphia Eagles.
I did.
And that's what happened. I wish I was still a gambling man. There was a nice price on the JETF Jets.
No, you don't.
Winning.
Trust me. You know more than anyone that those wins certainly are outweighed by the losses.
Well, so far 43-30 against the spread. That's pretty good. That's around 59%. But of course, if I was betting the games, I'd be 30-43.
Right. Exactly.
Totally reversed. Right. It was a bad beat on the Patriots with that safety. They were a 3-point underdog. I like them +3, and they ended up losing by 4. But to your point, Ian, there's 5-5-1 teams right now, so those look like the best teams. But you can kind of poke a hole in every single one of them. And San Francisco looked like the elite team of the league, but hey, Trent Williams had to leave the game. Christian McCaffrey had to leave the game. Deebo Samuel had to leave the game. And then now we saw Brock Purdy, the guy who needs a lot around him. He's not Tom Brady. Stop with those comparisons because they were both drafted late. He's not going to lift up an entire franchise. He had so much talent around him the first 5 weeks of the season. And when we saw guys getting injured, we saw Brock Purdy, still a good quarterback, but certainly not a high-end elite quarterback.
And look, I mean, they got a little bit of a scare, and it seems that Christian McCaffrey has avoided a serious injury. But, that's always been the thing, though, when the 49ers acquired Christian McCaffrey. It's an absolute slam dunk of a move for San Francisco and fits perfectly in with what they're trying to do. But at the end of the day, it's always just a gamble because at any moment, he could take one too many hits, and all of a sudden you're going from having, your running back position being really a driving force of your offense to being not necessarily a liability, but just another running back group like the rest of the NFL. And to that point, and this is the difference between, and we see this with San Francisco all the time. This is what happens when you do have, look, I think Brock Purdy's played really well. He had a tough game this past week, but every quarterback has that. I think it's unfair. The quick people are quick to say, "Oh, he's just a system quarterback." We've already seen it, John. I think that's unfair because we don't know. We don't know exactly what he is, and so far he's done nothing but say that. Yeah,
the 49ers have 10 field goals made this season.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Siri. Hey, look at that. We got a third co-host. Siri's popping in saying, "Hey,
well, She made sense. I mean, she seems to be accurate. So,
actually, you know what?
Welcome to the show, Siri.
I was going to say that was actually a really good point. Added point. It's like, okay, yeah, they've got a handful of field goals, but obviously this team scores a lot of points. They're very efficient in the red zone, so they're not going to have to rely on many field goals. Maybe they do now if Christian McCaffrey misses some time, but
they did miss a game winner on Sunday.
Yeah,
they had 41. Yard field goal attempt. If they make that, they remain undefeated.
But here's the thing: it's like
they haven't detailed that as much as she can.
Well, I was going to say they haven't even been in that position yet, though, because they've been blowing teams out. Now, all of a sudden, if they come back to the pack, they don't have, they don't have that difference maker at quarterback. Again, that's the difference. Like if Tom Brady, for example, John, or if Tom Brady were the quarterback of the 49ers. Yes, losing Christian McCaffrey would absolutely be a blow to this team, and you'd have to readjust. But Brady would elevate that. Can Brock Purdy do that if Christian McCaffrey? Now, again, it looks like McCaffrey might even play on Monday, which again, that's a huge sigh of relief for the 49ers, but it kind of just brings to the forefront yet again the potential that at any given moment you could see this 49ers outlook drastically change. And as we've seen over the course of, well, the last handful of years since like 2013, 14, 15, this team has been elite, except, they just lack elite quarterback play, consistent elite quarterback play. And certainly the play that can elevate, a team that may lose some of its elite talent over the course of the year.
I'm wondering in the NFL if we're ever going to get to the point where there's going to be load management. Like, obviously, San Francisco is going to make the playoffs, most likely win that division. They're in contention with Detroit and Philadelphia, maybe Dallas for the best record in the NFC. But are there going to be some games where maybe you don't sit out Christian McCaffrey, but you lighten his load a little bit? Like, here's a guy who, can get 20 carries, also make 5-6 catches a game. I mean, you're just putting him out there to get injured at some point. He's had that history. Do you start to have load management where, you get up by 17 points at halftime and you say, okay, Christian, thanks a lot. Sit on the bench for the second half. It doesn't normally happen.
There's only so many NFL games, and I'm not saying just because, he should be able to play, but competitively, I mean, there's really, you don't have, it's not like baseball where it's like, you know what I mean? Like you have so many games. Like in football, like, San Francisco may be elite, but it's only a matter of a game or two that separates them from the next best team. And since, there's only one bye week now, getting that number one seed is so much more important because it does give you such a huge advantage over everyone else in the conference. So I don't think the margin of just the, I don't think there's enough wiggle room in terms of like, okay, you can give up a little bit of success to manage your player. No, because like again, if you lose one game like out of the norm, that could be enough to knock you out of the running. So I don't know if that would necessarily happen in the NFL. Although again, you would think the physicality would kind of be like, hey, maybe we should rest some players, but this is where that second bye week might come in handy, especially if they decide they want to start adding more games. So,
and let's not forget what happened with San Francisco on Sunday. That Cleveland defense is for real.
Yeah,
I mean, they are phenomenal. So they stepped up as well.
Oh, sure, and like that's the thing too. This isn't just like another elite team in the league. This is a Cleveland team that I think everyone's kind of questioning, struggling, that type of thing. Whether it's they're going to be better off without Deshaun Watson. They won. Maybe they are better off without Deshaun Watson. You never know. But I mean, it's an interesting season. What else are you going to say? I mean, we know there's some pretty good teams in the league, but I just don't think there's any elite. And trust me, the Eagles signing Julio Jones, by the way, is not moving the needle that much. It's a nice move. I mean, it gives them another body to throw out there. And again, if he can stay healthy and make a couple plays here and there, that's going to make it all worth the while. So, but, in reality, it's like at this point, I don't think, any of these teams are certainly immune to an upset. And, as much as we sit there and say, oh, well, it looks like it's going to be the same old Chiefs. Well, they got plenty of issues themselves that haven't quite yet been really exposed to the extent they probably could have, because, well, I don't think they've necessarily played they haven't had a necessarily tough schedule to start the season. And I think but then again, Sean, I sit there and say, well, when they play Buffalo, well, Buffalo's had even worse, like bad moments. You know what I mean? Like they could have very well lost this past week, but so again, I don't even know if there are necessarily any traditionally elite teams in this league.
It'd be interesting to see what happens on the 31st of October, not just Halloween. I know you'll be out trick-or-treating, but what's going to happen at the trade deadline? Will Kansas City go out and try to add a wide receiver? Will Buffalo try to add to their defense because it's been decimated with injuries? What's Cincinnati going to do? They're a little weak at the safety position. So that's going to be interesting to see what happens in less than 2 weeks when we get to the trade deadline.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. So let's end the suspense. Let's go through and give our top 5 teams like we do every week. So And what we do, we just count down 5-1, and ironically, that is probably the record of most of these teams that are going to be on this list for most of us. So it's just a matter of what order they are going to be in. So, all right. So my number 5 team is the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, I had them up at 2, and I thought last week, and they've really haven't had. They've had their struggles this entire season, and it's a credit to them that they're 5-1. I mean, and that could, in the long run, be a sign that yes, this team is going to be very, very good come the end of the season. But Jalen Hurts has struggled. He's been a little inconsistent. He has had some great moments, but he's also had some questionable moments too. Certainly not the start that he got off to a year ago. So yeah, I look at it. I look at the Eagles and I say, okay, they've been kind of riding the line here this entire season. This past week was a bad look for them. Can they rebound from this? I think so. I think they should be able to, but it's certainly no guarantee. So my number 5 team this week is the Philadelphia Eagles.
Number 5 for me is the Miami Dolphins. And look, they're averaging 38 points per game during a season when scoring is down nearly 500 yards per game of offense. They're unstoppable. But the only thing I will say is 4 of their 5 wins have come against the Patriots, Panthers, Broncos, and Giants. Those 4 teams are combined 3-21. So we'll know more about the Dolphins when they face Philadelphia this weekend, because that's obviously a quality opponent. They were able to beat the Chargers in week 1. The Chargers always find a way to lose. The only real team they played so far this year beat them 48-20. So the Dolphins have been fun. I think they're going to make the playoffs and obviously entertaining to watch, but I'm holding off on them being the best team in the league. I have them at number 5.
Yeah, no, I put them at number 4, but I do share the same concerns that you do because, even against bad teams, their defense is not great. And, and to their credit, their offense is on fire. And this is a year that we're not really seeing great offensive football. And I think that has a lot to do with the quarterback play across the board. It's just, and we talked about this before, it seems like it's not as, I mean, we just can't. I think we came out of arguably one of the best eras of quarterbacking, over the last 15 years or so. So, this is going to take some adjusting to get used to what this era is going to be. And it's going to get better. I mean, there's a lot of young guys in this league, so we don't know exactly what they're going to all become. They could be great. They could be terrible. We don't really know. Time will tell. But for now, though, I do like, Miami, you're not going to outscore Miami. You're going to have to, obviously, if you're going to beat them, you're going to have to. But the point is, like, you're not necessarily going to beat them offensively. You got to figure out how to beat them as a defense. And I think that there's potential there. And, of course, they're vulnerable on their defensive side of the ball. So this is not a ranking that's going to keep, they're not well on their way to the top. I mean, they could be out of the list next week, depending on how it goes. So, yeah, so if Philadelphia goes in and knocks them out, all of a sudden I'm sitting there thinking, well, maybe they do just beat up on bad teams. It's certainly you could make a case for it if they lose to Philadelphia, especially if Philadelphia wins convincingly. So, but for now, I have the Dolphins at number 4.
I have Philadelphia at number 4 for all the same reasons that you detailed. You know what's amazing so far this year, and especially in week 6? 30 teams played in week 6. Only 5 scored more than 21 points in a given game. Isn't that crazy? I mean, because people talk so much about high scoring and how offense is dominant. Well, defense is making a stand this year. So I think it's made for some interesting games, right? So it's not just 54-51 like the Rams beating the Chiefs back in 2018. But like you, I have concerns with Philadelphia, but I've got them just a little bit above Miami because their track record is a little bit longer. So I have Philadelphia at number 4.
All right, number 3 for me is the Kansas City Chiefs. They were number 3 for me last week. And again, I mean, they're winning games, but sort of like Miami, what's going to happen when you play some of the better teams in the league? Because they've really been playing with fire with some of these. Like, do I think their win over Jacksonville was a great win? I mean, no, I mean, a win's a win, obviously. You don't get extra points for wins over better teams, but I just didn't think Jacksonville played great. You know what I mean? And to me, I see like a team that's Look, I don't think there's a grand conspiracy to help the Chiefs win. That I think it's foolish to sit there because you can pinpoint any sort of penalties that benefit teams throughout any game. I mean, it is what it is. Officiating in the NFL is difficult. Um, it's difficult enough that I don't believe that they're capable of running a grand conspiracy. However, the reality of it is the Chiefs have benefited from some late game calls that have certainly helped them either secure a win or take a victory. So what's going to happen when their offense is playing kind of poorly against a really great team? Well, they might lose, and that hasn't happened yet because they haven't necessarily played any great teams. So I have concern. Again, this is a very down top five. I think we have concerns about every single one of these teams, certainly. And look, I'll give credit to the Chiefs because again, they've been there, and you have more faith in them and figuring it out. But there are some distinct differences for this team as opposed to Chiefs teams in the past. And that has a lot to do with who's catching the football and how successful they are. And right now they haven't been. Thus, the quarterback play has gone down. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out once we get closer to November. They could turn it around and figure it out. But so far, it's been a lot of basically Mahomes to Kelsey or bust. And that's not a sustainable way of winning in this league, unless, of course, the entire league decides to have a down offensive year. Then all of a sudden you're like, all right, well, there's not too many better options at this point.
Yeah, they beat Denver 19-8 last Thursday.
Yeah.
I mean, Denver's been giving up regularly 30, 40, 70 in a given game, and the Chiefs only had 19. I also have them at number 3. They're just kind of steady there because their defense is really good. Their offense has struggled. And again, they have the pedigree of 5 straight AFC championship games, but I do have 2 teams ranked ahead of them.
Yes, and I think we might be on the same page here, at least top 2. So drum roll, please. Number 2, San Francisco 49ers. Again, I'm not going to all of a sudden, retract, any sort of bet I might have made for them to go to the NFC or go to the Super Bowl or anything like that after 1 week, especially now that we know that Christian McCaffrey may not miss that much time. But the reality of it is, they could have been exposed a little bit here because without that, they looked like a very ordinary offense. And I don't think any of us expected them to maintain the same level of efficiency if you don't have Christian McCaffrey in there. But they went from being a sure thing essentially every week to, well, they're just another team now in the league. And that's certainly something San Francisco's going to have to hold their breath and hope doesn't come to fruition again with it when it comes to Christian McCaffrey. Because, if he's healthy and Deebo Samuel's healthy and George Kittle's healthy and all these guys are playing well, they're going to be fine. And this loss isn't going to mean much down the line. But if this is the start of some sort of injury run or these guys are starting to get a little bit banged up, that could be concerning. But for now, I still have them as the number 2 team in my power rankings.
I'm surprised we're in agreement. I have them at number 2 as well. Look, if they make the field goal on Sunday against Cleveland, they're undefeated. Maybe we put them at number 1. But again, the Rams played them very tough early in the season. Cleveland has a legitimate defense. They were fighting injuries, the 49ers were, but I have them at number 2 as well. And, we do live in a bizarre world where I think we're going to agree on who number 1 is, and it's really bizarre who that team is.
Yeah, and the New York Jets. No, of course not. Well, look,
give us a couple weeks.
Yeah, well, I figured you saw Aaron Rodgers on the sidelines, and you were probably going to put them at number 1 just for that reason alone. But yeah, he was out there throwing a ball, and people are I really got to implore people to like investigate medical science a little bit more before you come out with your reactions, because being like in shock and awe that a guy that's removed, a couple weeks removed from the Achilles surgery is actually standing is not that impressive. And I'm not trying to say Aaron Rodgers is not. It's just that's normal though, John. Like people are like, oh my God, he's standing. I'm like, yeah, you can stand on a torn Achilles. It's that's not a, you know what I mean? That's not necessarily a problem. It's doing everything else that's a problem. So I always chuckle at people that like overreact to like very simple very simply explained medical situations. You know what I mean? Like, oh my God, I can't believe he's standing on a torn ACL. Well, your leg doesn't fall off when that happens. You know what I mean? You just your knee kind of gets screwed up. So, anyways, but yeah. So all joking aside, Detroit Lions. I mean, perhaps right now, 5 games in a row winning streak. You come out and I mean, really, they've really been the most consistent since the start of the season. Across the board, they're playing well offensively. They've had pretty good defense, and certainly in a season that has seen no real elite quarterback play. I mean, even Tua, as much as points are being put up on the board, this isn't. He's not separating himself. It's a lot of there's a lot of factors that go into it. But you look at Jared Goff, and it's like, how do you not consider him a prime MVP candidate because he's playing great football?
I'm with you.
Yeah.
Again, the bizarro world. Here's a guy who was pretty much ushered away from the Rams, kind of a throw-in just to make the salaries work to get Matt Stafford back. And look, Dan Campbell deserves strong consideration for Coach of the Year. Ben Johnson, their offensive coordinator, is probably going to be the hottest assistant to be hired as a head coach in the offseason. Goff was an MVP candidate in 2018. I mean, he was drafted in 2016. Jeff Fisher nearly ruined them. The next year, McVay comes in, the offense works, and then in 18, probably 3/4 of the way through the season, he's right up there as an MVP candidate. He's a good quarterback. He was drafted first overall. He's a good deep thrower. He's got all the tools, and now he's being coached at the level that he has been. Yep. I mean, look, their only loss was 37-31 in overtime to Seattle. They beat the Chiefs on opening night. I mean, that's a strong win. And ever since, they've been able to win in different fashions, like 20-6, or they can go out, beat you 34-17. Like, they're very versatile. Offensive line is strong. Defense has really improved. Look, they're 13-3 over the last 16 games, and they finished strong last year. So this team is for real.
Yeah, and look, I wasn't necessarily convinced going into the season because, again, it's the Lions, but, we're 6 weeks in, and again, you can maybe convince me that San Francisco's better. Obviously power rankings aren't finite. We're all entitled to our opinion, and you may be right, but like you're not going to convince me of too many other teams being better than the Lions right now. And certainly quarterback play. Again, you're going to be hard pressed to find better quarter, because even some of these teams that are 5-1, I mean, Mahomes has been all right. I mean, there really hasn't been anything spectacular. And if you're a anti-Mahomes guy, and I'm saying that kind of sarcastically because that's essentially, if you don't bow to the feet of Patrick Mahomes, you become a hater. So I guess I'm a hater, John. But the reality of it is some of the concerns about, well, what happens when you don't have a super all-pro Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill and all these other elite fast weapons around him? Well, you get middle of the pack quarterback play, and that's what you're getting right now, John.
Yeah, he's what, 12th or 13th in passer rating. Well, he's better than that. I think he'll, he's winning, which is what the ultimate job of the quarterback is to do, without question. But yeah, I mean, I'm with you. Goff could be the MVP right now. Tua certainly deserves consideration. McCaffrey, this is going to be one of these years where I think every week that changes.
Yeah.
And then who's ever really hot at the end is going to end up winning the award.
Well, and if you're a running back, essentially, if you're Christian McCaffrey and you can stay healthy, then this might be the year that happens, because, it very well could. I mean, we've seen stranger things happen before. So, but anyways, that's going to do it. We will obviously be back tomorrow. We're going to start talking week 7. Can't believe it. Week 7 in the NFL, getting there. We'll start doing that. We'll be back on Friday as well, and wrap up the week and do our picks and have all that fun, John, because I know that's what we consider all this. It's a lot of fun. So, it'll be a good time. So thank you everyone for tuning in, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.